Welcome to the Predictive World series brought to you by SalesChoice, which specializes in ending revenue uncertainty for human advantage. I'm your host, Jen Yim. I'm the Director of Product and Marketing here at SalesChoice, and we have three services powered by our AI platform. The first is Sales Insights, which helps sales professionals with guided insights. There's Mood Insights, which connects frontline voices to leadership. And thirdly, our AI and data science as a service offering, where we design, build, and maintain AI models with a focus on generative AI. Over the years, we've been building a trove of content with experts and thought leaders on AI and revenue growth. And we invite our listeners to go over to saleschoice.com to access tons of podcasts, webinars, white papers, and more. Today, I have with us Punit Soni, CEO of Suki AI. Welcome and pleasure to meet you. Punit, could you tell us a bit about your backstory?
Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. I appreciate the opportunity. My backstory: I've been, I'm the CEO and founder of Suki, which is an AI assistant for clinicians. Uh, I've been doing this for about 6.5 odd years, 7 years almost at this point of time. Before that, I was in Google for about a decade. Before that, I did some enterprise software startups. I did some venture investing in Google. I was in the search team and at one point was running the mobile apps product management team there and worked in gaming and social. And when we acquired Motorola, I was asked to run software there, so did that for a bit. Before starting Suki, I went to India where I was the chief product officer of India's largest e-commerce company, which once it was getting sold to Walmart, came back and started this company. So I guess the summary of my background is I'm an electrical engineer who's done, enterprise software, mobile apps, search, news, mobile, um, hardware, e-commerce. I guess it's logical that I'm doing healthcare now. So that's my background.
Wow, that's an amazing path. You've carved through a lot of notable enterprises as well. Could you tell us a bit about Suki AI?
Yeah, I mean the biggest public health crisis in the country that very few people talk about is clinician burnout. I think a recent study said that about 88% of all of our physicians don't even recommend their profession to their kids anymore. We are seeing that an average doctor can spend up to 2 to 3 hours a day doing administrative work, checking boxes, clicking things, doing everything except clinical care, which is actually what they actually trained for and wanted to do. This has huge impact not just on the delivery of healthcare, but it also has a huge cost impact. It has a huge impact in the quality of care, the data that is collected from it, and these health systems are already on razor thin margins, so this can't actually make things better for them by any means. What artificial intelligence does is actually provides an opportunity to come up with um, a solution to this problem, potentially offloading a lot of that work to AI while they can focus on what they do best, which is clinical care. So the mission of Suki is to make healthcare tech invisible and assistive so that clinicians can do what they love doing, which is clinical care. The way we accomplish that is by building an AI assistant. Think of it like a Siri, but for doctors, that you give to the doctors that can do clinical documentation for them, coding for them, that can answer their questions and be available to them, when they want to do this administrative work. So that's what we have been trying to build for the last 6, 7 years, and now, obviously, it's scaling and deployed in hundreds of health systems across the country.
It's really cool. There's a lot of resonance that I hear from that with obviously in the US market where you are based, but up here Cindy and I are based out of Canada too, and that's been in a lot of conversations here, and it also makes me think of our second offering, Mood Insights, which is about connecting frontline voices with and making them heard. I'm going to turn it over to our own Dr. Cindy Gordon to start the conversation.
Rooney, it's just a real pleasure. And thanks, Jenna, for having you here with us. Just hearing your background, and the fact you weren't in healthcare, there's got to be a backdrop story about why this app, given the breadth of knowledge that you had. So there's likely something there that you were concerned about, or maybe there was a personal development. Just curious, why healthcare now? Minus the opportunity, but there, what was the catalyst? I want the backdrop story.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Gordon. Congratulations on your company. It seems like you're doing amazingly well at building this company out. Um, well, I wish there was a really nice, somewhat romantic backdrop story that I could tell you about why I decided to do this. You know, sometimes I feel you have to be attracted to some amount of pain if you want to actually solve something in healthcare tech. Uh, the industry is ripe for disruption, and I don't really have any personal emotional reason. The When I started the company, I had a few different um, guardrails or things that I cared about. Number one, I wanted to actually do something that would be clearly a direct impact on society. And number two, I wanted to do it in a place where perhaps some of the natural experiences I've had could be of an advantage. Not everything can be, but some can be. And then finally, I wanted to do it such that it was a clear pain point that would have a go-to-market that could actually convert. And so when you start thinking about impact on society, healthcare is obviously up there. When you start thinking about, how do you actually take a particular pain point, this clinician burnout really resonated with me because it's a really real human problem. You can see it around you. You can see it when you go see your doctors and their backs towards you and they're like scrambling trying to get everything done. And then, of course, the opportunity is insane because the greatest technology company ever built is going to be in healthcare. The question just is, when will that happen? And this opportunity, the march of technology, and the need for healthcare probably creates a really interesting time when something really, really fundamental, on par with what perhaps a Google or Amazon or a Meta or Netflix have done in their own spaces, can happen in healthcare. A fundamentally large, successful platform company that actually fundamentally rethinks how healthcare technology is delivered. So that's the hope and ambition. Of course, there's a 1% chance we will get there, but there's a 1% chance we will get there. So that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, waking up in the morning and knowing that your heart's soaring in a noble cause, right, is a real, worthy endeavor. And you're right, this industry is highly fragmented, needs absolutely a rethink, but it's hard because it is so fragmented. Um, can you share a little bit more on the specific use cases? Obviously, I know that there's the assistant. It's obviously trying to, make life easier, whether it's documenting or sourcing. But can you go into some specific examples of use cases, and maybe share any customer experiences that you're comfortable to highlight, or just little stories and anecdotes.
Of course. Absolutely. I mean, look, the if you take if you my experience for most part has been consumer apps, consumer mobile, things like that. And actually, if you break down almost any problem area, at the end of the day, it's a human problem. You kind of have to pay very close attention to what are people spending their time on. And you look at doctors and they're spending 2 to 3 hours a day doing all this non-clinical work. What are they really doing? Well, it turns out that they're writing a lot of notes. They're writing a lot of documents that actually document whatever patient encounter they had. Then they are clicking boxes, checking things, and like filling out orders. Then they are actually attaching codes to it so that they can get paid. Then they are asking all sorts of questions, getting to get information about the patient when they're actually doing clinical care for them. All of these things pile up and become a lot of energy spent on things that should be at their fingertips. So if you think about the use cases from a clinical workflow perspective, how wonderful would it be if you had an AI assistant who could listen to you and the patient talking to each other and automatically write a clinical note that represents that encounter and your thought process? How awesome will it be that if that note actually had all the codes that are required, ICD-10, others, to get for you to get paid already recommended and attached to the note, so that all you have to do is look at it and say, this looks good to me. How awesome would it be if you could actually just ask questions of this assistant and say, hey, I'm going to be seeing Puneet next. Can you give me a sense of their A1C level over the last 3 months and plot it in a graph? Or, do they have any allergies? What medications have they been taking? Things like that. So this idea of an AI assistant that can write notes, answer questions, stage orders for you and prescriptions for you, summarize patients. I'm going to be seeing Puneet next. Can you give me a summary of what I should be looking at, or what's the background here? Fill forms. This AI assistant would be godsend, to these clinicians. And those are the use cases that we are actually building into this assistant. And the truth is, if you can even do half of what has been promised, there is so much pain right now in burnout in this industry that um, that it would make a fundamental difference. And so, what happens if you actually deploy this at scale? We see 70 to 90% decrease in all time taken in administrative work. These folks are spending time now focusing on clinical care and literally saving a couple of hours a day where they don't have to do any of this work. We see the note quality rapidly increase, which actually means that suddenly they can back what they've actually been paid with a lot of data that can be used. We're seeing that there is a lot less frustration when you have to find information, because you don't have to go through 6 clicks and 7 things to actually, you know, set up a flu order. And so all that leads to ultimately a significant change in the happiness level of the doctor. So there's ROI in terms of revenue, there's ROI in terms of time saving. But at the end of the day, I have stories of doctors who have gone back home, and been with their kids for a change at 5 or 6 in the evening rather than staying late and writing. Stories of doctors who have saved their marriages because they've actually been able to go out and spend time with their families. So there's some very human stories that back the impact that this can have on people.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little bit curious, because obviously are you targeting the GPs, the general doctors, or is it all doctors have a certain set of, doesn't matter if you're a specialist or not, there's certain job outputs or
Right.
accountability you need to drive. Any indication on sweet spots in the coverage
Yeah.
model?
I think the way to think about this is, actually somebody was saying, well, what's the difference, between an oncologist and a neurologist and a cardiologist? There's fundamental differences in what they're actually treating, but there are very less differences in terms of the workflows of what they do. They have to analyze a lot of data. They have to, go through a subjective, objective assessment and plan for for every patient if it's an ambulatory setup. If it's an inpatient setup, then they have to actually do a quick bunch of checks again at regular intervals to look at things. So it's not the specialties that actually the AI has difficulty with, it's workflows that actually matter. For example, an ambulatory, an outpatient doctor is fundamentally different workflow from an inpatient doctor, who is a fundamentally different workflow from an emergency room doctor, who may have a fundamentally different workflow from a telehealth doctor. And so, therefore, for us, initially when we started, we said, you know what, let's go with the subsurgical specialties. Basically, orthopedic surgeons are seeing like 4 different kinds of issues again and again. The AI should be able to pick that up pretty quickly. Well, it turns out that that's where we started. But then over time, care became a pretty big attack vector, because actually the diversity of the data that was created led the AI to actually be very supportive in all sorts of interesting use cases. So specialties, we are actually pretty agnostic. 50% of all of the users is primary care, which actually makes sense because 50% of all doctors are primary care, but we have 99 specialties that are supported. It's the workflows. Ambulatory and outpatient is where we have started. We now have actually started to dabble a little bit into inpatient, early days there. And emergency rooms only about a few months ago. Telehealth, we power the second largest telehealth platform in the country, so we obviously have a lot of experience with that now.
Yeah, just really, really interesting. I'm making the assumption that within the AI infrastructure that you are with the knowledge that you're hearing in those conversations, you're probably starting to shore up, whether it's small language models versus large, but there's going to be some evolution opportunities there in
Yeah, I mean,
data.
even in the last 6 months, to be honest, Dr. Gordon, we have seen a fundamental change. I mean, there was a time when you would give suggestions to the doctors on what content should be in the note, we would have like 60-70% accept rates. Now we're at 92-93% accept rates, and growing rapidly. I think that these technologies, if you put the right data into them, can be fundamentally impactful for a clinician's workflow. But at the end of the day, you know, it's super important to remember that they are not doctors. These technologies are assistants to doctors. And I think knowing the difference between the two and providing that assistance at the right time is actually probably the most important nuance to remember in this space.
Yeah, for sure. The ethical implications there. At the end of the day, you can't sue an algorithm, but you can certainly sue a doctor, and you want to make sure that that final stroke is coming from a different workflow, for sure. Totally see the relevance there. Um, I guess another question that's in the back of my mind. Obviously, you're adding value to a number of organizations. Are you starting to see any support from the insurance industry, which are just dealing with these incredibly high, yeah, insurance, claims, but also they're starting to really want to influence the industry as well to to relieve some. Are you finding that they're helping? Like, if you look at the ecosystem, one is going after the doctors because you want them to be utilizing your product, but the other is what are the influencing strategies in the ecosystem, whether it's I'm speaking at a conference with Optimal Health. They're bringing all their CEOs in and in the valley, and those providers have thousands of doctors that it might, that they're giving insurance to, for example. So curious how you're working the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that our focus is obviously the health systems and the clinicians directly for now. However, do think that the payer ecosystem is going to fundamentally benefit from it in some interesting ways because now there'll be a lot more transparency in the data that actually flows from the encounter to the outcome to the point where the payers have to decide how to pay. You actually get much better accurate capture of exactly what happened from coding to diagnosis to problems to documentation that backs all of this when you have an AI involved in doing this. Of course, the doctor has the oversight, so they are the ones who have to actually approve everything. But at the end of the day, it creates just a much cleaner system when it's not prone to the vagaries of how much time the doctor had to document something properly. From a pair itself system, you can imagine that these coding systems are backed with a lot of humans, clinical decision document optimization, lots of work done to actually kind of like manually kind of clean and curate this stuff. AI can be very fundamental in actually removing that and making this much more fluid. Some people say, well, will that mean that like a lot less people have to be engaged in that job? And I would say that you would probably up level all of this so that the data would be much more transparent and you would put your energies in the right places and a whole new set of things will pop out of it uh, in the payer side that might actually hopefully reduce costs while also make sure that the right kind of revenue systems are available to the payers. So really really impactful and powerful, but I think the beginning and the starting point of this is the doctor. First, let's focus on the doctor and the patient and make sure that we can serve them very well. If that happens, then downstream all of these impacts are just obvious.
Have you started to open up your platform with an open API where other developers can basically, integrate to your offering into their offerings, and but also thinking about is there anything you can open source at all just to move more speed to the market?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. We have a second business line, which is Suki platform, which basically takes the entire AI stack that Suki has built and opens it up for a carefully curated group of people so far. The reason we are careful about who we open it up to is because it takes a lot of work to build a really awesome developer-facing platform that people can use without any help, and we certainly are not there yet. But for example, the largest clinical communications company in the country, Vocera, its enhanced voice product is powered by Suki. The second largest telehealth platform company, Amwell, its Converge platform is powered by Suki. Philips, which is actually doing is an investor in the company, is actually trying to power a bunch of its healthcare products using Suki, and so on and so forth. So we have like six different medical record systems who have signed deals to embed Suki inside them so that they can give the power of Suki to their doctors directly. So I do think the platform play is actually very significant. There will be a time when we will consider how to actually make it much more open. Right now, it is a little bit more carefully curated. And then obviously the local optimum of that is when you actually get to a place where certain things have to be open sourced. Not there yet in terms of the maturity of the company, but there will be a time for that.
Yeah, yeah, you've got a vision there. That I think that's very wise. To really ensure that the platform continues to grow over time, because there's so many uncertainties, and the more players you have surrounding in the ecosystem, the depth and it's
Exactly.
things can shift here. They don't shift as fast in the healthcare segment, but there'll be a point where that centrifugal force will be.
Yeah.
'Cause a lot of people are pounding on it, right?
Yeah.
Um, now,
Completely agree with you.
in the competitive landscape, who are you watching? Who are the players that you got to keep an eye on?
The only one I care about is Microsoft Nuance. I think they are, I guess, the largest, most powerful enterprise company in the world. So you better pay attention to them. They are the incumbent in this space. They have been around for 20 years trying to build various solutions in the space. We are the upstarts who started with a whole fundamentally new philosophy that instead of dictation, now you can actually just have an AI listen and be able to do things using it. But they are the company to beat. That's the company to displace. And when we end up displacing them, then obviously by induction we'll end up having a huge impact on the market. So that's my primary competition.
Yeah. What about Google as a term of ecosystem, right?
We use a lot of Google's products inside Suki. Google is a platform company that is not building a full health stack healthcare product. They have a bunch of things in their cloud stack that actually can support healthcare products, medical speech recognition systems, generative AI models, things like that, etc. And We have always been really good partners with them. Work closely with them. We intend to kind of collaborate and partner with them as we go into all the places where their cloud offerings are provided. But my take on Google is not one of a competition or competitor. It's more of a partner, a platform that can actually help make Suki even better.
Yeah, it's interesting on the platform. We're starting to see some interesting developments, with the Google stack where, the AI large development groups, even the financial services, are making strategic decisions to use the Google stack as a platform, as a core platform, right? And
Yeah,
recent announcement here up in Canada, if you're familiar with the Bank of Nova Scotia, their chief data scientist, they just released a development. So, it's interesting to see the enterprise dynamics that are starting to shift, and the engineering teams, the CTOs, the scientists are saying, we like this.
yeah, no,
Now,
you're right. I mean, the thing with this is that the real battle is not the battle of these models; it's the battle of cloud. Um, who's going to actually own the cloud infrastructure of these? Because that's like a many hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue there.
yeah,
And whether you provide Suki on it, or you provide generative models on it, or you provide other things, the idea is that use my cloud and here's all the things you can do on top of it that will be available. I think Microsoft and Google and Amazon will keep battling that out. And These models and all of the work that's happening right now is primarily in an endeavor to get people onto one cloud versus the other.
yeah, that's very, very true. Yeah, I interviewed a CTO from Skillsoft not too long ago, and he said, you know what? I've got to make sure that our assets can plug into whether it's Amazon or Microsoft, because I'm not sure at the end of the day which one maybe I should really fundamentally move to. So I want to make sure I've got open connectors. was just interesting, right? Hedging bets, right? Just to make sure the architecture, they understand the migration realities earlier rather than at a point of need. Now, as an entrepreneur, you've been at being an entrepreneur for quite a while in different endeavors. What are some of the top lessons that you've learned in your journey for building out a company? And I'm a former venture capitalist as well, so obviously, I think we all know find a use case that you're passionate about because you need to love it for a long time.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. You well said. You need to love it for a long time. Um, I think that it's not the first thing I will say is that most people think of entrepreneurship as a financial decision or a professional decision. It's actually neither. There are much better ways to and easier ways to actually make money. There are, and probably professionally, there might be other ways you can actually move even faster. Entrepreneurship is neither a financial or a strategic decision. It's a romantic decision. You do it because you actually just want to do it. That's who you are. And then you kind of explore and grow as you go about doing that. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned as you go through that, many things. Like, first of all, it's a roller coaster. I tell people that, like, if you're having a really bad day in a startup, then just wait a day. And if you're having a really, really good day, then just wait a day. Regardless of how, what kind of day you're having, it's going to turn pretty quickly. So I would say that's one thing that is a lesson, which is having a little bit of equanimity with what's thrown at you is a good idea, because nothing is really as bad as it looks or as good as it looks in startup world. And then the other lesson is actually a lesson of like resilience. And um, I think that the fundamental superpower that entrepreneurs have is basically insane amounts of resilience and stubbornness, and your ability to just kind of stay standing no matter what is thrown at you. Because at the end of the day, winning or losing in an entrepreneurial journey is primarily about who's left standing. If you have the wherewithal and you can take whatever's thrown at you, you'll probably be okay. Which kind of brings me to like the third thing, which is resilience, and how do you actually um, you know move through this journey with equanimity is actually directly correlated to who you're surrounded with, which is basically the most important lesson, actually, not just of an entrepreneurship, but of life, which is, you know, find people that you want to spend a lot of time with and enjoy working with, and who make you feel better and make you better as a person. And then whether it's a relationship or a startup, you will always end up actually having a good time, and potentially even see a lot of success along the way. So I would say those are some of the key lessons as I see it. If your listeners are trying to start a company, I would say, you know, you know, remember that it's a romantic decision. Make sure that you have the resilience to actually stick through it. Don't go up and down with what's thrown at you, because then you will just be on an emotional roller coaster. And then finally, focus really, really hard on who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, the so much wisdom in your comments, um, particularly around the, 6 degrees of separation, right? And there's so much research there. You change two or three of those networks that the optimization impact. I think everything is all about fusion at the end of the day. Just really appreciate those gems. And I particularly like the fact of it's a romantic journey, and and in some ways, having the perseverance and resilience point that you mentioned, I think is also a really key point. And I remember as a VC, we were doing discussions with Kleiner Perkin, and I always ask sometimes the wise ones, what's the most significant qualification for investing? And they said talent, 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 and more talent. And they said because the smart ones will morph. They will constantly be learning, and they'll always be looking in all directions all at once. And there's always this discomfort of and skepticism that they really are safe. You know, it's just an interesting dynamic, a lot of psychology. Just want to say thank you so much for the time. Puni, I'll turn it back to Jen. Thanks for joining us. I know our listeners will really enjoy this dialogue, and I look forward to getting this out into the market soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much, Dr.
Thanks, Puni. And it was a pleasure to connect and to chat on AI together. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. And I'd like to invite them again to saleschoice.com/resources, where we have a lot more amazing content like this. And join us next time.